My name is Lori Rubin, and I'd like to introduce you to Abba Shapiro. He's a pro photographer. He's written books. He's spoke around the world. He's a great educator, so he's really fun to watch and listen to. He is one of our co-directors for the education department, and he is a real pro at all of our software. So sit back and relax, and Abba, go ahead and start the presentation, and thanks everyone for watching.
Well, thank you
Lori.
everybody for joining us. It's exciting to be able to present to you. I'll give you an idea of what we're going to do. We're going to cover a couple of the applications. We're going to look at Luminar 3, which is our Luminar program that has libraries, so you can use that to organize and rate and flag your photography as well as edit your photography, and allows you to do some batch editing, and you'll see the powers of Luminar. And I'm also going to show a new product that we released just about a week and a half ago called Luminar Flex, and that's specifically designed to be used as a plugin for Photoshop as well as Lightroom. And for those of you who are on a Macintosh, it can also be used in Apple Photos. So I wanted to introduce that to you. And there are two slightly different products, and I know that a lot of folks in your group are using Photoshop and Lightroom, so I specifically wanted to modify my presentation so that you could see both of those products. And of course, at the end of the presentation, I'll try to keep it down to about 40 minutes, so there'll be plenty of time for questions. And that way you can ask questions about any of our products or nuances about anything that I might have shown. And with that, I'm going to get started, and this is the interface for Luminar 3, our Luminar with Libraries product. And as you can see, it's a very elegant interface. It's very easy for me to scroll through all of my images, and I can look at my images in a variety of different ways. First of all, the nice thing is that depending on my screen resolution and the size of my screen, it's very easy for me to go up here to the top part of the interface and choose if I want to look at my photos either as a small thumbnail all the way up to a large thumbnail. And as you can see, it takes advantage of every bit of space. You don't have all those extra black bars. So it's really nice. It's showing the actual aspect ratio of these images, and I can easily sort through them that way. Let me go ahead and, yes.
Can I ask you a quick question? As we're looking at your photos projected on the screen, and indeed on my laptop too, some of them look kind of blurry, like they're low resolution. I don't know if that's better.
Yeah, I think I just need to go in. It's probably just a refresh on my computer. So if I step into any of these, they should look as sharp as the original image.
Yeah, no, that one looks fine. It was just when you had the
libraries that I have been playing with multiple things, and I opened it up, and I probably didn't do a refresh on this. So they should be full resolution, as you can see when I click on any of these. They do bring them up. And in my screen, and I think this is a function maybe of my upload, is that they are nice and sharp. So when you're using the application, they will be nice and sharp when you're viewing them in your library mode. And as a matter of fact, I might even bring some images in so you can see how quickly it can bring in the thumbnails from the JPEGs and from the RAW files. As a matter of fact, let me just step back here. Luminar can work with a variety of images. I'm going to just lean this up a bit, and I'm going to go and look at the ones from Paris. And so I can work with JPEGs, RAW images, TIFF files, PIC files, pretty much any of the primary photo formats. And when it comes to RAW, pretty much much of the popular camera formats. So I can use a variety of images to import. Now, the way it works, I want to just discuss the way libraries work. I actually have a lot of images already imported, but I'm going to bring in some more images, is that it very quickly finds the thumbnails, but it doesn't modify when you add a folder. It doesn't modify and have to import those images. So it's very quick. It actually leaves them in their location and just either creates a JPEG if there's not one in there as a thumbnail, or it will actually extract the JPEG from the RAW file. So if I wanted to add a folder, I would hit the plus key, and let me make sure that I'm at my desktop. And I have a variety of images here. So for instance, I'm looking at all these travel photos, but I have this library here of New York street photography, as well as it's a subfolder of some images that I might want to blend. together if I did a high dynamic range image. And if I click on that and I click Add Folder, it will immediately look at what's inside that folder and bring all those images in and start creating those thumbnails immediately. So it's a great way to organize your images, to take a video card, and I do video also, to bring a camera card in and see what's on that card very quickly without having to move things, or to just find images. So that's one of the key things about library, is the speed at which you can actually open up a large folder of images. The other thing I want to point out is, remember that there was a folder in there called Blend. And if you look over here to the right side, it actually respects the folder structure in your operating system. Now, I'm working on a Macintosh, but this works equally as well on Mac and PC. We work on both platforms. As a matter of fact, your license will work on one of each machine if you want, or 2 Macs or whatnot. So it's really nice. And because it respects the hierarchy of your folder organization, if you already have your images organized inside of folders and subfolders, all you have to do is bring in the top level folder and it will respect all the contents. As a matter of fact, these travel photos are all inside another folder. And if I right click, I can actually show where that folder is in my Finder or in Explorer. And if I open that up, you can see all of the subfolders that are in there. So it's a really nice way to organize things and find and manage your images. So with that in mind, let's take a quick look at, once you bring images in, once you actually attach a folder to Luminar, how you would rate and organize them. And it's the same way that you're probably used to doing it if you're working in Lightroom. I'm going to open up one of these folders just to start working with it. Let's go into the Shanghai folder, and I'm going to switch this over to maybe large. This will be a little bit bigger. And what I want to do is, I've already gone through and rated some of these, but I want to show you how I would do this and how quickly it is to do this, and some of your options. So the first thing you can do with any of these images is I can go through and I can choose if they're a favorite or if they're rejected or unmarked. And it's the same keyboard shortcuts that you would use in Lightroom. And I know a lot of the people in your group do use Lightroom. So I can go through, and if it's a favorite, I can simply hit the P key as a pick, and you'll notice this little heart is now solid. If I go to the next one, I can either click with my mouse or use the left and right arrow keys. And perhaps I want this to be a pick, but I'm going to have to reject one. So let me go ahead and reject this image here. And I'm going to simply hit the X key, the international sign of rejection. And you'll notice that it is now dimmed out and there's a little X here. So I can quickly go through and do my picks and rejections. And if I wanted to, I could then sort and show just my picks, just my favorites that I have gone through. So it's a nice way to do a first culling, or a first separation between the images you like and the images you don't want to work with. Let's go back to all photos and talk about the second way that you probably do this, and that's giving things a star rating. And I can do that by either hovering my mouse over an image and clicking on these grayed out stars. I can right click on it to set my rating, or as you can see, the keyboard shortcuts, I can simply go through and give it a 1 to a 5 rating. So what I would likely do, and let me go here to unrated images, and I'll go through and start selecting these. And I know that my computer's a little bit slow here. So I can zoom in. You see these things are fully sharp. Let me go ahead and bring that down. I'll give this one, I like it. I'll give it a 4. Actually, just at the, and you'll notice as I rate these, they're going to start disappearing because I'm looking at my unrated ones here in the upper right-hand corner. This is a 3, this is a 3. I'll give this a 4, we'll give this a 5. This is just more of the exercise of doing it. And there's a panorama, and I'll give that a 5, and we'll leave these unrated. So now I can go back, and if I wanted to, I can sort my images by everything that's perhaps 3 stars or more, and it's showing me those. And once I choose that initial way that I want to refine my images, I can then choose how I want to sort them. So in this case, I was sorting them by capture time, but perhaps I want to sort them by rating. So I'll click on rating, and now I have my 3s next to each other, the 4s and the 5s, and I can do that ascending or descending. So now I can go in and see, yes, this is my 5-star images, and I'm ready to start working with it. So it's really nice. I can sort these. I can by number of stars. I can also add any sort of a color label to them, and it's the same keyboard shortcuts that you're probably familiar with if you're using Lightroom. So it's the 6, 7, 8, and 9 key. As you can see down here, we also have purple, which you can get to just by right-clicking, and then you can remove any kind of a color label. So organization is really nice. I can find things very quickly. And then if I want to process an image, and I'm going to go ahead and show all of my photographs and find an image that I want to work with. And I want to show you how easy it is to work with any of these images. So let's sort these by capture time. That way I have these grouped by my specific locations. And I want to go ahead and I'm going to process this image. This is the one that we opened earlier. So why not? Let's work with that. So to work with any image, you can simply select it. If you double click it, you can bring it full screen. And what you want to do is switch from the library module, which allows me to sort through my images, to the edit module, and the interface changes. And what you'll see here is now on the right-hand side, the ability to add a variety of filters, either an individual filter or a group of filters. And we also have something called Luminar looks. And these are really nice because they allow you to quickly process an image, but you're not locked in. And I'm going to click here over on the lower left side under User Luminar Looks, and I want to make sure that we're looking at the essential looks. You can see we have a variety of look collections available. And when Luminar ships, you actually get these first 8 looks that you see here. But all the rest of these looks I've downloaded. Most of our looks are free. We actually have some look collections that were created by some photographers that have their specific style that are for sale, but there are a lot of free look collections. Now I'm going to go ahead and use the essential look collection. And I want you to notice that along the bottom of my screen that all of the thumbnails and the names of my looks have changed for the looks that are in this collection. And if I wanted to, I can simply click on any of my looks and it's going to apply that look to the image. And you'll notice that on the right side, these are the filters that are used to create, to modify, to develop this image to get this look. Now I'm not locked in with just the defaults. I'm going to step through so you can see how it affects the different looks affects the image. I switch over here to black and white. It puts on just our black and white conversion filter, contrast enhancer. I'm going to move ahead to some of the more stylistic ones. There's a portrait enhancer, so we have it's nice and it's soft. We can go ahead and look at a sky enhancer. It's going to make the sky pop, as well as even things all the way to the far right, super sharp, which is going to bring out my details. Let me jump back to the very first one, which is my AI image enhancer, and talk about how you can modify a look. So you see here, there's a slider that goes from 0 to 100. So if I think the look is affecting my image too much, I can just globally dial it back and blend it in with the original image. And that's a nice feature. But what's even nicer is that when I applied this look, it applied these 4 filters with some adjustments already made to those filters. It boosted the vibrance a little bit. It added 2 of our unique filters, which is the Accent AI filter and the Sky Enhance filter. And I'll talk about those in a moment. And it also did a little bit of developing where it applied a little contrast to my image and also recovered some highlights. Now, just like the slider right above the look that I applied, all of these sliders are live. So if I like what it's done, but I'm thinking, you know what, it brought the vibrance up a little bit too much, or maybe I want to bring down my saturation to globally reduce the saturation on my image, but bring up the vibrance to bring out the more muted colors, I can do that very easily. So I can modify any look that I apply all the way down to the granular level of each of the sliders. Now, in addition to applying these, if I wanted to add additional filters, I can click on the Add Filter button. And for instance, maybe I want to bring out, a little bit stylize this. So I want to add a little bit of a vignette, and I'm going to click on that and apply a vignette. I'll close that down a little bit. And the nice thing about the vignette is I can easily position where the center of it is. So I want to focus specifically on her. So I'm simply going to click on Place Center, and then I'll click it right about her neck, and that'll move that vignette over to her. And you can see it's gotten a little darker here on the right, and I can tweak that a little bit if I want. So I can modify any of the preset looks that I've applied by adding filters or by turning a filter off. So for instance, if I wanted to, I could say, I don't want to modify the saturation and vibrance. I could delete it very easily. Or if I just wanted to see what it would look like without that one filter applied, I could simply click on the eyeball and it turns off that filter, but it leaves it here with all the adjustments. So if I change my mind, I can turn it back on and modify it. So that's a really nice feature, is that I can easily apply over 50 filters. And we have everything from quick fix filters to the really deep end stuff that you might be wanting if you're used to using the filters in Photoshop, such as we have an HSL filter for hue, saturation, and luminance. So I could go in here and say, I want to modify the red in this dress. I applied the HSL filter. I can go to red. I could pull down the saturation, or maybe I just want to tweak the hue of the red a little bit more towards the magenta, or maybe I want to move it a little bit more towards orange, and I can very easily control how I've modified my image. Now, what's really nice is that all of these adjustments I've done have been recorded in the history, and if I wanted to see everything I've done, at the very top of the right panel, there's a little drop down called History, and this is everything I've done. So I can step back to any point in time if I've made a mistake or want to see what I've done or see what an image looked like before I applied a certain filter or a certain look. So I can step back very easily to different points in time. And I can move on from there and create a whole new future for this. As soon as I make a change, all of these will be gone. But what's really nice about this, and I'm going to take it all the way back up to my HSL filter, is that when I close Luminar and reopen it later, this history is still here for every single one of my images. So I don't lose that when I quit the application. So it gives me the flexibility to go back and modify something. As a matter of fact, very recently I developed a photo. It was late at night, and I'm sure you can all relate to this. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I loved it, and I tweaked it, and I overdid the vignette. And I looked at it the next day, and I'm like, what was I thinking? Well, what was I thinking staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning is the first question, but I think we can all relate to that when you get excited about your photos. So I could go back, open up that specific image, open up the vignette, and just fix it very quickly, and I didn't lose anything, and then re-export the image and then post it. So that was a really nice feature, and that's one of the nice features of the history panel. I'm going to give you a couple other pointers on the interface just to walk you around. I'm going to close this add filter location just so we have a little more real estate on our image. And if we look across the top of the interface, one of the key things that you'll probably want to use are these two buttons up here on the upper right hand corner. And one is an eyeball, and if I click on that, it will show me the original image before any modifications and how I've modified this image. So I can look easily at a before and after with removing all of my filters temporarily. I can also look at it in a split screen. So if I wanted to see what I did before and what it does after to my image, I can do that also. So those are really nice features. In addition, I can zoom in and zoom out very easily. The keyboard shortcuts that I like the most, because they're the same ones that I'm used to using after all the years with Lightroom, are Control-0 and Command-0, and that's a fit to screen. So very easily, if I had zoomed in or zoomed out with Command or Control plus and minus, Command-0 allows me to look at it 100%, and I'm sorry, to fit my screen, and Command-1 allows me to look at my image at 100%, so I can really see if I was sharp and my details are here. And this is great if I wanted to go ahead and add some detail or structure. So perhaps I want to see a little more detail in the blouse here. I'm going to add another filter. I'm going to add my detail filter, and I can scroll through and find that. I could also just type in my filters catalog in the sort box, detail, and it's going to show me any filter that might have sliders where I can adjust the detail of my image. I'm going to select Detail Enhancer and bring up my small details and my medium details. And you'll notice the shirt's starting to look nice and crisp and crunchy, maybe a little bit too much, but it's also affected the rest of the image, which I don't necessarily want. And what that leads me to is that every single one of the filters have the ability to create a mask. So to the right of each of the name of the filters, I can select this little brush here, and with the drop down, I can choose to create a mask using a brush. I can create a radial mask or even a gradient mask, which is great for skylines and sunsets. I'm going to use the brush. I'll click on that. My interface changes a little bit. If you look in the upper left-hand corner of the top bar, I now have one that says Paint and Erase. So I can paint in or erase just that filter. And I can change the size of my brush very easily. With any of these drop downs, I can also use the left and right bracket keys to make the brush smaller and larger. And if I use the shift key, it'll make that brush softer or harder. So now that I've adjusted my brush, I'm going to start painting in the detail just on the dress and maybe on her hair. So as soon as I start painting, you'll notice that the filter is no longer applied to the entire image. It's just being applied to where I'm painting on her blouse here. Now, we can't see exactly where I've painted unless we turn on the overlay, the ruby lith. There's a little eyeball up here on the left. It says show mask. I turn that on, and there we can see how well or how poorly I've painted. I can hit the erase key and be a little bit neater on that if I wanted to. I can zoom in to 100%. I'm going to simply hit Control 1 or Command 1, and maybe I want to add a little more of that detail into her hair. So we have some nice detail there. Holding down the space bar allows me to very easily move the image around. I'm painting in the detail, you can see it's there, but it's only coming in specifically where I want it. Maybe I'll sharpen her eyes just a tad. I'm making my brush smaller with the left bracket key and just painting in some detail very nicely on her eyes, maybe a little bit on the eyelashes. So this is my, let's go back and zoom out. There's my overlay. You know, I had done all that glorious painting, and in my enthusiasm, I was on the erase. So there we go. That's the great thing about double checking. I'm going to go ahead and paint this in my sloppy way. Zoom back in again to 100%. Move over, paint that detail in on her eyes. We'll turn off the ruby lith, and you can start seeing that detail. And a little bit on the eyebrows, just for some sharpening. I'm being a little bit quick here. And I want you to see if I go to the right side where it says Detail Enhancer, I'm going to turn off the creation of the mask by clicking on the brush, but I can also toggle the details on and off. And you can see it brings in some of that detail into the eyes and into the hair. So it's really nice. And if I wanted to, I could do the opposite. If I wanted to, say, smooth out her skin, I could go ahead and bring in another filter. I'm going to bring in the structure filter. And instead of moving structure to the right, and let me just zoom out a little bit with my mouse here, but I want you to be able to see some of the detail, is I can move that to the left and it's going to soften my image. It's going to soften the skin. I can do this very quickly. But this is the cool part. I want the opposite. I don't want to soften the rest of the image. I just want to soften the areas that I didn't mask out before with my detail enhancer. So with any filter, I can simply copy and I can paste the mask from one filter to the other one. So I'm doing that. And all I need to do now is invert this. And I'm just clicking on here and you can see under mask, there's an option to invert. So now I have softness going onto the skin in the background, but sharpness going onto the eyes and the hair and the dress. So let's take that back to 100%. We can toggle these on and off, and you can see some of that nuance there. I could pull it back. So now I've processed this image. I want to do one more thing to it, show you another great feature is that I like the sky enhancer filter. And what the sky enhancer filter does is it recognizes sky from blue hour to blue hour, from the right before sunrise to right after sunset. So all the way through that golden period and that red color of sunset, as well into just blue skies with clouds. It recognizes that, and with a single slider, it will enhance the saturation of that and the contrast to make it really pop, but it won't affect other parts of the image. And that's one of the several types of artificial intelligence filters that we have, as well as image aware filters. So it can recognize what's sky, and as I move that, I'm going to take it all the way back to 0. You can see it just really pops that sunset. And if 100% isn't enough, I can go ahead and duplicate that filter. Any one of our filters can be added multiple times within the same layer. And this is just a single layer. I can add multiple adjustment or image layers to this. Sky's a little overdone with 2 sky enhancers at 100%, so I'll dial one back a little bit. But take a look at what the before was like and what my after is like. It really is more the image that I intended it to be. I want to show the Accent AI filter, but I want to start fresh. I don't want to start with an image that I've already added a look to. So let's switch back to the library module. I'm going to look at all my photos. I can simply either hit this little button right up here, which takes me to my gallery view, or hit the G key, which again stands for gallery, and I can work with one of these images. So let's take an image that isn't so great, this image here, and I'm not sure how well it works. I've actually processed these two other images. I know they work great, but I'm going to take this image here. I like working without a net. I double click to load it in. I want to edit it, and I want to apply my personal filters, and I don't want to start with the look. I'm going to, as a matter of fact, close the looks just to give us a little more real estate. So this was a JPEG panorama that my camera shot, and I have a choice when I start working on an image. I can have it have no filters applied or no filters added to the right side and just bring them in as I want to. So for instance, I could bring in my Accent AI or my Sky Enhancer. The other option I have, and I'm going to close this right side here, is I have Workspaces. And Workspaces allow me to add multiple filters very quickly, but unlike the look collection, these filters have no adjustments made to it. So they're still neutral. So all the sliders are at 0 wherever they're located, but it's a very quick way to bring in the filters that I might want to use to quickly process an image. And I'm going to use Quick and Awesome, but you can see we have ones for aerial photography. We have our essential filters, which bring in the develop, as well as saturation vibrance. So depending on the style of photography you shoot, you can bring in any of these workspaces, and you can also create your own custom workspaces that you may like by simply adding additional filters or stacking some filters into this section and simply saving it as a new workspace. But we'll go back to Quick and Awesome because I want to focus on the Accent AI filter and the AI Sky Enhancer filter. What the Accent AI filter does, with a single slider, it adjusts the tonality of the image. It looks at the contrast of the image, it looks at the highlights, the shadows, the blacks and the whites, and what we've done is we've taken about 80,000 images and have the before image and then the after image, which have been processed by hand by photographers. And using machine learning, we compared them. And with this one slider, it intelligently analyzes the contents of the image and improves the image. So you can use the raw develop filter and do all those individual sliders, but a lot of times the Accent AI will open up your shadows, recover your highlights, give you a little bit more pop, all with a single slider. And I'll do that on a couple of images in a moment. And then I can add the AI Sky Enhancer, and as I indicated before, it can recognize sky, and you can see with just a slider, it's really starting to bring out the detail in the sky, and it's designed that it's going to enhance whatever colors there, the blue or the sunset golds of the sky. We saw that before, but it's not going to make the clouds all crunchy, and it's going to keep the clouds white. So it's smart enough to know how to find sky within the image as well as to modify it. And you'll notice that the water didn't change color here when I added the sky enhancer. So I can easily move that to the right. I'm going to switch and move my saturation down and my vibrance up. That's going to even out my image. I have a little bit of icky clouds over here. I could work on that, and just a pop of clarity. And very quickly with those 4 sliders, I was able to go from a kind of a dull image to an image that really starts to pop, starts to look the way I wanted it to. And then I could go ahead and add additional filters that I might want to use to enhance this. I think it's a little crooked, but I think it's also based upon the way the horizon's working. But in my tool menu, I have a crop option, and I can click on that. And in the crop area, I can adjust the angle. I can easily, move this around to what I want. I can also choose how I want to crop it. So I can use free range cropping and make something very narrow in the panorama sense, or open it all the way up. Just bring that down a little bit over here. And if I've messed it up like I just did, I'm going to hit reset one more time. Just tweak my angle a little bit. There we go. Smooth that out. And it's trying to keep the aspect ratio, which is why it shrunk there. So I'm going to simply drag the corner there and bring that out. My hand-mouse coordination is far from the way it should be these days. We'll take that a little bit there. There we go. Frame that the way I like it. There we go. Hit done. And now I have this image cropped the way I want it to. And the nice thing is, this could be a basic developing of my image, and I can then stylize it by adding another layer and now opening up my looks panel and applying one of my stylistic looks on top of this. So maybe I want to go to dramatic, and I can see how dramatic will affect these. And I think we'll look at mystic. That's kind of a cool little feeling, kind of giving me a little bit more of haze in my clouds. And then I could tweak these. And when I'm done, when I've finished my image, all I have to do to export it is to go up in the upper right-hand corner, click on Export to Image, and I can export it in a variety of formats, everything from a JPEG to a TIFF to a .psd file. And depending on the format you choose, for instance, if I choose TIFF, I can have it as a 16-bit or an 8-bit image. I can also choose the color space, whether I'm going to printing or to the web, as well as resizing it if I need to. So that's a very nice feature. I'm not going to do that now. Let me hit Escape and just take a quick peek. I'm going to bring this full screen. I kind of made that a little bit smaller to show you how if I've developed something, and that's that stylistic look, I could apply all of these filters to another image. Now, this is obviously taken at a different time and place, but stylistically, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I can select an image, simply copy it with Control or Command C, select another image in my library and paste it with Control or Command V. It's going to apply all of that functionality to this image. I can open it up by double clicking on it. We can see that it applied that developing to the first layer and applied my stylistic adjustment layer, as well as in this case, applied the crop. So I don't necessarily want the crop the way it is. I'll go back here over to crop. We'll have that over here, and I'm simply going to reset the crop, hit done, but now I like stylistically what it's done to my image. It's a very different feel than the original image. You can see that. And I can go forward with my editing. The other nice thing I can do in my library is if I have a variety of images that I want to work on, and I'll make these kind of small here, I can copy the developing from a single image and simply hold down the Shift key and select a variety of other images and right click, and under adjustments, I can sync all the adjustments there. Now it's grayed out because I selected a primary image that I hadn't developed, but it's a very quick way that if you have a whole shoot that you did with a certain environment, certain lighting, and you just want to develop them all quickly, you can develop one, select all the rest, and sync your adjustments. And that's a great time saver. So with that, I want to quickly hop out of Luminar 3 and show you Luminar Flex, which is our plugin, and how well it works in Photoshop as well as Luminar, as well as Lightroom. So I'm going to open up Photoshop here, grab an image that I recently used. There we go. So I'm opening up a raw image. It'll give me the option, of course, when you open up a raw image in Photoshop to run it through the develop module, and I could if I wanted to, though I want to show you how I would probably edit this completely in Luminar. So I'll open the image without any modifications. And right now, if I wanted to, I could select this image and send it directly to Luminar or do anything I wanted to do in Photoshop. But what's unique about Luminar Flex is I can turn this into a smart object, which I'll do, which means that when I now apply my Luminar Flex plugin, I can quit Photoshop and come back and still modify that filter. So I'm going to turn it into a smart object, which is what I did. And then I'm going to go to Filter, Skylum Software, and choose Luminar Flex. It will launch Luminar as a plugin to Photoshop, and it's going to look very similar to the edit module in Luminar with libraries. And I can very quickly process this image. So I like this image, but I really wanted the colors to pop. So I'll go to, I don't want landscape enhancer. I was there before. I'll just go over to professional. I'll do AI auto enhancer. It applies the develop module, opens that up, the accent AI filter, and the sky enhancer filter. Now, what's interesting, and this is the case in both of the applications I've shown you, is that if there's no sky and in your look that you've created, the slider has been adjusted, it recognizes that there's no sky there and it's actually grayed out and I can't change it. So it's smart enough to know that even though I've applied this filter to my look, it's not appropriate for this image. And what's great about that is I can create a look or use a look and apply it across multiple images. And if there is sky, it will enhance it. If there's no sky, it won't. So this quickly kind of made the images a little more vibrant. If I look at the before and after, you can see that the colors are popping a little bit. I want them to pop a little bit more, so I'll add a saturation and vibrance slider. I'm going to open that up. I'm going to add the tone filter, and there's a great little feature in the tone filter, which is called smart toning. And what it allows me to do is open up my shadows if I move the slider to the right without affecting my highlights, or recover my highlights without affecting my shadows if I move it to the left. So I'm going to move it to the right and open up some of the shadows in the skirt. Really want that to pop a little bit like all the other colors. And you notice that it didn't change I increased the luminance of that with the toning, but it didn't change the color at all, and it didn't affect the rest of my image in the highlight and midtones. Again, if I want to turn that off easy and on easily, I can see how it modifies the image. I like the way that looks. I'm going to hit apply. As soon as I hit apply, it will take me back into Photoshop with everything now applied to that smart object. So there it is with it on. If I turn that off, you can see the before and after. But the nice thing is, if I change my mind and I want to modify this, even after I've quit and saved this file as a .psd or a .tiff file, I can once again double click on the Luminar Flex filter within the smart object and modify anything. So perhaps I like the green here, but it's a little too green. I'm going to add that hue saturation filter that I'm really in love with. There we go, HSL, hue saturation luminance. Take the green, bring the saturation down a little bit, maybe even change the hue, move that a little bit, maybe more towards the aqua. There we go, that looks a little more natural. So I've easily made some changes, and as a matter of fact, we have a lot of great little stylizing filters underneath Creative, so I can add that to this layer, or once again, add a new adjustment layer, add a little bit of a golden hour feel to this. That's one of the styles, just a hint of that. That's kind of nice. Maybe I'll add a little bit of high key. That'll be nice for her skin. Make that soften a little bit, add a little saturation, and once again, hit apply, and it will return me back into Photoshop with all of these applied, and I can now use any other filters that I might use within Photoshop on this smart object, as well as any of the adjustment layers, and really start tweaking this image and working with it. So that's an idea of how it works with Photoshop, and I'll very quickly show you how well it works with Lightroom. So we'll switch over to open up my Lightroom catalog. So if I have a Lightroom catalog available. And so inside of Lightroom, I can send any images the same way. And let's go ahead and look at my top images here. So if I wanted to work with an image, I can simply do any of my Photoshop or my Lightroom work. And once I'm done with doing anything I want to do in Lightroom, I can simply right click and I can edit in Luminar. So I can send it right to Luminar Flex. It'll open the plugin. And what it does when I do this is it allows me to send it to the plugin with all of my Lightroom adjustments, or I can edit a copy or even modify the original. I'm going to take advantage of any adjustments I've applied and send it over to the plugin, click on Edit. It'll create a duplicate inside of Lightroom, so I'm not modifying or changing my original image at all. I can then tweak this image stylistically. I'm going to simply add one of our creative filters, the Orton effect, which I like nice. It both softens and sharpens the image at the same time, creating kind of a really kind of cool stylistic look. Simply apply that. That's a real quick fix. It's something I don't have in Lightroom. I can hit apply, and now it's going to send this back to Lightroom, and you'll see there's a second image with all of my Luminar adjustments made. The other really nice thing you can do when working in Lightroom is instead of sending a TIFF image, which is kind of the standard way that Lightroom likes to talk to most plugins, if I have a raw file, and let me go here to the metadata and just sort this by my file type. So I want to just look at files that are raw. And so now I'm just going to be looking at my raw images. And I can, if I want to really take advantage of all the power of Luminar, select one of these images, and instead of right-clicking and saying Edit in Luminar Flex, I can go up here under File, and I can use Plugin Extras and transfer that to Luminar Flex. What this does is sends the original raw file into Luminar, and I can get all of that, goodness of the nuance with the highlights and the shadows. I'm going to add one of my workspaces. We'll go with image aware, puts a whole bunch of filters that I like on here. We'll boost with the accent AI, a little bit of the sky enhancer. I want a little golden hour here. Don't need any of these. I like a little more vibrance. Add a little structure to the building. Give this a little bit of a pop, but I don't necessarily want that structure to be in the sky. So I'm going to go over here with paint and just paint that structure in on my buildings very quickly. You can see now I have that nice sharpness in the buildings right here. I want to add a little bit of warmth to that to warm up the image. And I think I'm pretty good with everything else. I like this. I want to open up my shadows, so I'm going to add my tone filter with the smart toning. And the nice thing about any of the filters, if I click on them, I can actually move them up and down, so I can control what order these filters are applied. And now I'm going to just apply a little bit of smart toning to try to open up the shadows there in the buildings. And maybe if I wanted to, just to show you, I can add a raw develop. And whenever you add raw develop or any develop filter, it's applied to the very top of the workflow. And here I can just add a little bit of contrast and maybe warm up the images a little bit more. And I like the way that this is going. If I wanted to go with a white balance, I could choose something here and just see how it looks. Grab that. And yeah, it gives me a much more dramatic sunset. There is my before. There is my after. I've worked completely with the camera raw image, and all I need to do is hit apply, sends it back to Lightroom. You'll see there's two images, but with just, within a minute or two, I've been able to really enhance the look of this image. So we can see here, this was the original one, and this is the one that I just processed very quickly with Luminar Flex. And you have a lot of the same functionality within Luminar with libraries. So with that, I kind of give you a quick overview of two applications, very fast and furious, and I will open this up to questions that you might have about these applications, or perhaps one of the other applications that we have at Skylum, such as Aurora, Photo Lemur, and AirMagic.
Thank you, Abba. That was great. I have a question. I work mostly in Lightroom. I think I mentioned that to you last night. Is there a difference between working in the Flex plugin or edit in Luminar? Is there advantages either way or
there is slight difference. Flex was just recently released, and what we did is we listened to the customer, and there were a lot of folks that didn't really want the library function. They just wanted the plugin function. So we focused on that, and with the plugin capability, one of the things that you can do with Flex is you can send a camera raw image or a DNG directly from Lightroom into Luminar Flex, into the plugin, so that you really have the benefit of the raw develop of Luminar. And I really think from personal experience that I get a little more dynamic range with Luminar's raw develop module versus the raw develop module that I find in the Adobe products. Just, it's a little bit, maybe one stop, and I find I have a little more control. So that's one big thing with the plugin, is the ability to actually do a DNG. The other nice thing that you can do with the plugin is Lightroom has a great ability to select multiple images that I might have shot as a panorama. And if I right click on all the images that I shot, I can very easily merge those into a panorama, or in some cases, I might have bracketed the panorama and created an HDR panorama. As a matter of fact, I did that down here. I think it's this image right here, might have been the one that I started. So this was merging all these other images together, which is great. And then I can send this, because this is a true DNG that it's merged together. Instead of sending it as a TIFF file, I can go ahead under File and send this as a true DNG into the Luminar Flex plugin, which is something I can't do with Luminar with libraries. That's where they start to be different. And then I have the raw develop filter here to start processing the image. So if you notice, if I add the filter, I can add a raw develop. So I'm getting all the nuance, everything that was recorded by the sensor, and I can really start tweaking that without having to push and pull my highlights and shadows on a TIFF, and this way I can get a lot more detail and a lot more color nuance to my image. And of course I can modify the aspect ratio and the crop and the size very easily, so I get that panorama, because when Lightroom puts it together, they just kind of piece all the pieces, but they don't necessarily send over the right aspect ratio because they're just a bunch of images glued together. So I can do that, process it if I want it to very quickly, add a developing new adjustment layer, do the auto enhance, make that a little bit more golden, kind of like this, kick up the sky enhance for my sunset, probably tweak it a little bit more, but then I would hit crop and apply. Let me crop it before we go, hit the C key, make sure it's not locked, bring it down, boom, and boom. Probably would make this a little less blue, but for the sake of brevity, we'll just send it over this way. You can see how quickly I can process that. But it's the fact that I can work with a digital negative in Lightroom that I have a lot more control where I'm sending it to. You'll also see as the products grow over time that there'll be slightly different features. That Luminar with libraries is designed for people who want to quickly do things. They want the library function, and perhaps they don't want to be cluttered with some of the higher end features. On the flip side, if you already have a feature inside of Photoshop on Lightroom, we don't want to create a redundant feature inside of Luminar. So the plugin is going to be streamlined and focused on the things that you want to add to Lightroom and Photoshop. And one of the nice things is that I know a lot of folks out there are hesitant or don't want to subscribe to the cloud. And if you have the latest downloadable version of Lightroom Classic, I believe that was version 6 at the time, you can now enhance what Lightroom can do without having to step into the cloud version. So it's a nice marriage of Photoshop and Lightroom and the Luminar AI features. So that's one of the things that differentiates them.
Okay, terrific. We have a question. Laura?
I have a question. This is about the enhanced sky feature. If you're taking an interior shot, can it realize there's a sky outside of the window?
Sometimes it can, and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, it can be confused. So what it tries to look for with any of the sky features, and I don't know if I have anything with a window in my catalog, is it does look for what's generally on the top of the screen. So if it's a small window, not necessarily, but there are times, and I have a great shot, and I probably can't find it this quickly, where I shot some basically through, it was a situation where I kind of shot through the rocks here, and the rocks were, definitely in silhouette, and the sky was blown out just because of the dynamic range, and it was able to discover the sky and enhance it in that situation. Sometimes if the sky is only a very small part of the image or it's kind of obscured, it won't see it, but usually about 90% of the time, it does find it, creates a nice mask, and can enhance it very quickly. So you can see here that, it does its best, but if I shot into where I had a close-up, I might be able to show that. But I would say most of the time. Here's an example where we have some sky over here to the left of this image. And if I go ahead and move that over, it kind of gets that. I have some clouds there, but sometimes it does miss it with that. And we're continually tweaking that. But it's pretty good. 90%, I'd say.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? So I noticed that
Is there a clone? Oh, can you clone this?
Did you hear that, Abba?
The question was cloning in this?
Uh-huh.
Oh, so yes, absolutely. So we have this image here. Let's see, find something I can actually clone with. Go to my group and let's find something here in Paris and that I would want to remove. Actually, I bet Cabo has boats that I can remove. Here we go. So I'm sure there are things that I want to clone out here. So let's go ahead and grab this image here and out of the camera, a little bit underexposed. So I do want to just quickly, throw in some enhancements here. Probably it's a little dark. And this is what I love is the speed. Add the raw develop filter. Just open it up a little bit. Okay. So I have this image. I really like it, but maybe I want to remove those rocks. So all I need to do is go under Tools. I have both a Clone and Stamp and Erase tool. I find I like the Clone and Stamp for more complex areas that I need to remove, though the Erase works really well. But if I click on Clone and Stamp, it'll create a stamped layer, and I can zoom in with the command, with the plus key. There we go, and I'll set my source. I just want to clone some of the water from here. And once I select my source, I can paint it over. Often I like to do this at a 50% opacity so I can pick multiple points to. You can see very quickly I can clone that. And on the flip side, haven't tried this before. If I want an armada of ships, I'm going to select that ship. Hopefully I'm kind of painting this in. There we go. Painting, there we go. We now have two boats chasing each other. Wasn't too accurate there. If I didn't like it, I could go ahead and bring it down a little bit lower. But very easy to clone and move something. As a matter of fact, I could move something over there. Let me undo that and do it the right way, because I want to show you that I could maybe, if I wanted to move this, we'll bring that over here, paint the boat in, nice soft edge, we'll hit done. So now we have the two boats. So that showed you how I could clone this, but if I wanted to, I could also try to erase this second boat. So I would just go Tools, Erase, and we'll try to erase this and see how well it works with a complex background. It's preparing this. It's basically creating a stamped layer. I paint over the area that I want to remove. Go up here to Erase, see how it does it. Give it a second. There it is. Oh, it's gone. I blinked and it wasn't there. And hit done. So I've been able to actually not only clone my ship to a different location, but to erase the original one. I could have probably, when I was in Clone and Stamped, just cloned in some sky over the original one, but this was a challenge to see if working without a net, I would crash and burn, and luckily I did not. So there you go.
Very good. I noticed as you hover over each of the filters, it gives you like a pop-up dialog box with a description. Well, now it's not doing it, of course.
Well, I've been popping between applications. It's just something you turn on and turn off. So there's a little button here, an information button with it on, because a lot of times you want this, but once you use it a while, you probably don't want these pop-ups. But it's really nice because what it does is it describes specifically what that filter does. So if you see a filter you're not really sure, you can get a quick idea of what that filter will do. And in some cases, the best solution is just apply a filter, some of the creative filters, and just move those sliders all the way. It's completely non-destructive. So the golden hour is going to add more of that sunset feel. You can see it can be kind of aggressive if you wanted to, and control that. And if you hate a filter, if you hate what you've done, they're very easy to double click on any of the sliders to reset that slider. And you can always click on the drop down and reset or delete any filter that you decide you don't like.
Very cool. So we have another question.
Can the tool tell how sharp the image, the original image is?
Can the tool tell how sharp the original image is? So when you
let's say if the image is not sharp enough to start with, there is no value to further sharp the image at all, right?
No, you can sharpen the image. What we have and what we have that I really like is, I mean, you can always do structure, but our detail enhancer is great. It's basically a sharpening filter without having to go into the unsharp mask. So what's nice about this, and I'm going to go to 100% so you can see what's happening here. I can increase the details just in the small details in this case and the medium ones. But for instance, the sky, which I don't want to do, I can actually soften that by moving that to the left. So with this off, you can see, let me just let it kind of undo and redo. It may take a second here. You can see the sharpening. So there I have this, I have kind of overdone it a little bit for the demo, but I can very easily add that sharpness. I can protect it a little bit if I want or dial it back. So being able to control both my small, medium, as well as my large groupings of details, I get a lot of that ability to create sharpness. And what I really like is that if I just wanted it in some of these areas, I could do this and then grab my brush and paint in that details just in those areas that I want. And if I like that, but I want to add a different set of sharpness to say maybe the ground here, I could add another detail enhancer, do something very similar, maybe even more aggressively. So I'm painting it in on the water here and paint in just the, turn my brush on there. There we go, brush. And now I'm painting in just the details with the greater area here. And this is really nice that I can have all this nuance control. And then of course, any layer can have a mask of any size that you want. Maybe I'll add structure, increase the structure here because I want it on the water, and do the same thing. I can simply take that and paint a mask in. So now I have really some serious detail going on in the water. And you can see here what my before and after looked like. Oh, and I moved the boat. I'll just turn off the individual ones. See the detail enhancer just on the water there, just on the rocks, and just on the water, the splash. So I do have a lot of control with controlling sharpening, and I really like the way the detail enhancer works. Another feature that I really like is we have something called microstructure, which again, really, I'm going to just type in micro on the top, and there it is, microstructure. And here it's again the ability to add some, oops, I clicked on the thing and got out of that. Here I can show you another great feature. If you get lost, you can go to your library. I'm going to go to all my photos. And one of the ways that I'm going to search my photos is by the ones that I have edited. And now I should be able to very quickly go to my most recent one, sort by edit time. There we go, found it very quickly. Unintentional teaching opportunity, but here under the edit, I can add that microstructure. I don't know whether I actually added it before I kicked out my yeah, I did add it. And so I bring that to 100%. And if I wanted to, you can see how it works here. God, I keep clicking on the wrong thing. Get too excited. Bring that forward.
Story of my life.
Yeah. And well, it'll load in all the filters, so it has to do that. There we go. And I can apply that microstructure. And it really adds this unique sharpening that I can do right here on this ship. And I'm going to turn that off and on. So if I wanted it, I can just paint it right in on the ship. If I just want that nuance right there, microstructure is really a very cool one that a lot of people don't use. And I'm just going to paint that, really that sharpness in just on the ship. And if I wanted to see what I did, you know, if I'm being sloppy, I then go to the erase and I can soften my brush. And there we go. So now I've just really sharpened that ship. So you see some nuances there. We'll bring that back to 100%. So it has a lot of nuance.
So we have another question. Leon?
I would like to know if I can use your Luminar 3 in older versions of Photoshop. I'm working in CS5. Will it work?
I think CS5 is old enough that I don't think it does. I think it's CS6. I would need to check on that, and Lori might be able to do that behind the scenes. We have on our website, I think, the lowest version that it will work with. So I would have to double check. I don't want to give you misrepresent the answer. I know it will work with some of the older versions, but I don't know if it'll go all the way back to CS5. It might be Luminar Flex that can do that, but it also depends on if Adobe changed the way that they put their filters into play in those older versions to see if it can attach to it. So I'd have to check on that.
Two more quick questions. I'm sorry.
I want to add on. Will the full version of Luminar 3 work in CS6? There are no holdbacks?
If Luminar 3 can work with CS6, all the features should work. So it's not like you'll open it up and you won't see the sky enhancer. So it's not like we held anything back. So if it works, and I want to double check on which versions work with which versions, you get everything. And I'm pretty sure with CS6 it should work smoothly.
Okay, we were running short on time, so I want to thank you, Abba, but we have two quick questions here. Marty?
Gray and noise.
So noise removal and grain. Is there a way to remove that?
So if you go add filters, I'm going to reset my search box here. I'd probably do that on a new layer just because I have areas. So we have a really nice denoise that you can denoise in both the luminance as well as the color values. And again, what I like here is that a lot of times you don't want to run denoise throughout your images. You just want to put it into the shadows. So you can set this up. And again, with any of these, you can just brush that denoise in anywhere you want. And in addition, in reference to grain, we do have the ability to add grain. I can find it very quickly by just typing in GR, not GT. And there we have our grain. And you can apply your grain here. So you can make it as thick and choppy as you want and as rough, or you can dial it back. And again, you can paint that in where you need it. So you do have the ability to add grain to an image. The other option you have is you can, if you have an image of just grain, you can add that as an image layer and blend it in. Every single filter and every single layer has the ability to do a blending mode. So if I applied grain here, and let me apply it a little more aggressively so you can see it, I don't have to take it as just an overlay. I can actually blend this in, and I could do a screen and bring some of these in or an overlay and work with my grain that way. So I can work with any of my filters by the amount as well as the blending mode, and each adjustment layer also has the ability to have blending modes, which is really nice. And you get an immediate update when you just hover over them. You don't even need to select them to see what the blending mode will do. But Lori, why don't you take it back if you can, and just quickly go through that while we still have a few minutes.
Fantastic. I'll make this quick. So hopefully you can see my screen. I'm on the skylum.com website. And in here is where you can get more information, technical support, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. So if you just go to skylum.com, since we're talking about Luminar right now, if you just hover over this section here, we've got a section for Luminar 3 as well as for the Luminar Flex plugin. Both of these have information as far as their user guides are concerned. There's specific user guides that are set up. So if you have any specific questions like system requirements, maybe you want to learn more about a particular filter or even keyboard shortcuts, they're all in this user guide. So that's online. The other thing too is we do have educational content as well as a YouTube channel where we post lots of different information, different genres of photography and tips that you might be interested, including here's something that Abba did, an overview of Luminar Flex plugin. So we've got quite a few things that we post every single week, which is great. And then of course, webinars. So if you want to see more webinars, we have probably about 4 or 5 every month. So if you're interested in taking a look at that as well.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you for letting us visit.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.